Hello, this is Mr. Buffington, Eric Buffington, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about understanding Common Core. And the background that I have is that I do have a master's degree in education and educational leadership, and I've done a couple of studies on Common Core, and I was also teaching when they implemented No Child Left Behind. So I've kind of seen the evolution of this for almost a decade, and we're currently, revamping our entire school's curriculum to be aligned to Common Core. So again, I've got a little bit of background in this. I just wanted to help other people to understand what Common Core is, the pros and cons of it, and of course, before we get started, we have to address the elephant and or donkey in the room that is politics. So let's get this out of the way and then we can try and understand Common Core. So first off, who criticizes and supports Common Core? The Republicans criticize Common Core and the Democrats support Common Core in the political arena. And we'll compare that to who criticized and supported No Child Left Behind, and the Republicans supported it and the Democrats criticized it. Why is that there's so much? Well, it's pretty much the timeline. No Child Left Behind was created during Bush's administration, and Common Core was created during Obama's administration. So No Child Left Behind was created during Bush's administration. He saw a problem internationally. Our education system was failing. It was failing on an international level compared to other countries. And so he was the first one basically to try a universal standardized testing for students. Common Core was created to address some of the major mistakes of No Child Left Behind. It's important to note that it was universally recognized there were mistakes in No Child Left Behind. Okay, it wasn't a perfect system. Is that a good reason for us to criticize it and be overly critical? No, it's not. Let's try and think of it as No Child Left Behind was a good-intentioned program that was meant to address a serious problem. Common Core was created to try and make it a little bit of a better program. All right. It's okay that something failed. It's okay that something wasn't perfect. So first off, let's just stop blaming Bush, stop blaming Obama, stop making this a political issue, and let's try and understand Common Core, what it is, where it came from, and the good things about it, and also the downfalls of it. So I'm going to hopefully be able to address all of that in the next 5 minutes or so. Let's do it. First off, the best way to learn about something. What is it? Let's say I wanted to learn about a certain car, like a Ford maybe. Where would I go? Probably a Ford dealer. Would I ask someone who is opposed to that idea? Would I ask someone who is blindly following that idea? Probably not. What I'm going to do to help us understand Common Core is I'm going to look at Common Core. Just like if you're investigating a religion or a type of car or a book that looks interesting to you, if you want to actually learn about it, you have to look at the actual content itself. So that's what we're going to do today. So, Math 8, or Pre-Algebra. This is one of the most highly criticized topics in Common Core, is the math, and specifically the math that prepares you for Algebra 1. Let's look at the topics. Math 8 talks about the number system, expressions and equations, functions, some geometry, including slope and things like that, and some statistics and probability, mean, median, mode, and things like that. Those are the major topics. That's it. That is what's inside of Math 8. Now, I'm going to show you an example of an actual Common Core standard within those topics. Here it is. Common Core standard. I picked this one, and you'll see why in just a second. Know and apply the properties of integer exponents to generate equivalent numerical expressions. For example, 3 to the power of 2 times 3 to the power of negative 5 is 3 to the power of negative 3, which is equal to 1 over 3 to the power of positive 3, 1 over 27. That's what the type of question that you need to do. As teachers, we would say, solve this expression, and we just show that first part of it, and show all of your work. All right? That's an example of Math Common Core. Okay, that's what's in there. I've often heard people say that there's no math in Math Common Core. It's all just theoretical. No, there's some math in it. I've also heard some people say it's way too easy. Well, it's got some complicated things in it. Again, this is 8th grade math. So it's the math before Algebra 1. It's preparing them for Algebra 1. It looks like a pretty reasonable standard. Okay? Now, that's not to say that it's a perfect program. So what I'm going to do to kind of show an understanding of Common Core is that I am going to talk from now on about Pennsylvania Common Core, and this is why. Every state has its own standards. That's another misconception. Common Core gave it national standards that you need to base your standards off of, but each state has their own Common Core. Okay? PA Common Core is so similar to National Common Core that the comparisons I'm making with PA Common Core will be consistent. Here's an example. Here's the national standard that we just looked at. Here's the Pennsylvania version of it. It looks very similar. The wording is changed just a little bit. It says without using a calculator, but basically it's the same exact standard. All right. So just to understand it, PA Common Core, very similar to the National Common Core. Most of them should be pretty much aligned. All right. Also, it's where I come from, so I'm most familiar with Pennsylvania standards. So that's why I'm going to be talking about Pennsylvania standards. It might differ slightly depending on which state you're in, or which state you're testing in, or what state you've lived in. But this type of comparison should be pretty universal. Let's take a look. Pennsylvania, the old standards, there were 73 standards. All right, some of the standards looked like this. Use ratio and proportion to model relationships between quantities. Add, subtract, multiply, and divide different forms of rational or irrational numbers. Here are some examples. Good. Describe the concept of unit rate. Create a table of graphs from a function. Use the order of operations to evaluate numeric expressions. So you can see that they kind of had a huge range. Because there were 73 standards, they covered a lot of different topics. Some of them would be more complicated than others. Some of them would take more lessons than others. But that's what the standards were. They were like this. And I just picked some random ones that would fit on this slide. Not trying to kind of sway anything, but you can definitely look up. I'll put in the comments below links that you can check out all the standards if you'd like, the old ones. Here are the Common Core Pennsylvania standards. There are 34 of them. And the eligible content pieces are these. Determine whether a relation is a function. Determine whether a number is rational or irrational. For rational numbers, show that the decimal expansion terminates or repeats. Limit repeating decimals to the thousandth. Some of them are very specific. Apply the Pythagorean theorem to find distance between 2 points. Construct and interpret a two-way table. This one's a little bit complicated. Two categorical variables collected from the same subjects. Basically, it'd be like doing collecting data from students, surveying students in your classroom and saying how many of you go to bed by 8 o'clock and how many of you have chores at home, and then graph those two things and see if they have any correlation. All right, and the last one here, interpret solutions to a system of linear equations. That's when two lines cross each other. So you can see that the topics are a little bit more in depth and less of them. So basically that's what you get. The Common Core is fewer standards, more application type questions, and more depth. That is the Common Core in general. Like in one sentence, this is how I explain it to people. What is the Common Core? It's less standards with more depth and more application. Now let's talk about why that's good and bad. The thinking behind it is that they wanted more depth and less width. So we're not going to do as many topics, but we're going to dive in deeper with those topics. It models after successful countries. Like Singapore and things like that. I know Singapore is a popular one, but these countries that are doing really well tend to focus really deep on a couple of concepts. It also prepares students for problem solving, so it's more application problems so that they could go out and actually solve real world problems. Now, the downside of this. Now, I am going to focus on non-political criticisms. These are criticisms that have absolute value and are completely valid. but are not politically driven. First off, who decides what's important to teach? That is a valid concern with Common Core. If we're teaching less things more in depth, who makes the decisions on which ones are important? And that is absolutely a valid concern and a valid criticism to Common Core. Who's making that decision? Also, inconsistency in education from start to finish. If we keep changing the standards every couple of years, how are we going to have consistency for our children who start with one and end with another one? Completely valid point. You can't be wholeheartedly changing everything from year to year and expect students to get it. Also, if you start changing it from start to finish, kids are going to miss things and there's going to be huge gaps in what they actually know. And then the third huge criticism of Common Core, again, the funds to implement it and the funds to assess whether it's working are hugely abused. And that is a completely valid concern and criticism that has been driven home multiple times on Common Core. So one more flaw in our comparison, and this is just my general biggest concern with standardized testing, and that's that other countries, often the ones that we're comparing ourselves to, they assess students and assign them to different levels of education. If you're on a college track, or if you're on more of a, you know, physical career type of thing, if you're going into construction or plumbing or electrician, or some of those careers that don't need a college education necessarily, then students in these other countries are assessed early for aptitude and ability, and they are separated out. So when we're comparing our international rate, we often compare it to their college or university bound students only. So it would be kind of like taking our top tier of students who are doing well in the classroom, have an aptitude for testing well, have an aptitude for that type of education, and compare them to other countries. That would be more of a fair comparison. So again, that's my huge criticism about the international comparison. We in America have an idea that we don't want children left behind, and what we assume is behind is anyone who we want all students to be able to go to college and do whatever they want, whereas other countries kind of limit that with testing, different types of testing and assessment and placements throughout different amounts of years depending on the country. So that's a huge criticism of the entire premise of making a national education common standards. But that's just one other thing. So hopefully through all of this we've come to a little bit more of an understanding of Common Core. Again, if we're going to understand Common Core, what we need to do is ignore the politics, the things you're hearing from political sides, both sides. Look at the actual standards. Having an understanding of the history of it is fine, but look at the standards. Open a book. Some of the people I've heard criticize Common Core most fiercely have never looked at an actual Common Core standard. Look at them. They're available. And then make some informed decisions. It's okay to be upset about it. It's okay to be supportive of it. But let's ignore the politics. Look at the actual standards. Look at the intention of what they're trying to accomplish and whether they're succeeding in that goal, and then make informed decisions. I hope that was helpful for you in understanding Common Core. Have a wonderful day, guys.